Buongiorno, questa piattaforma nel sud del Belgio è stata costruita in parte con soldi europei, servirà a camion, treni e navi a scaricare le loro merci che poi andranno nei poli industriali vicini alla regione oppure addirittura in altri paesi. È stata costruita con soldi pubblici e una percentuale del 12% dei fondi regionali. Ma siamo davvero sicuri che a lavori terminati quest'opera sarà utilizzata appieno e quanti posti di lavoro creerà? È partito il dibattito per il futuro dei fondi regionali, perché in futuro i fondi europei siano più legati alla crescita e ai posti di lavoro. Jim Gibbons è andato in Galles, dove i fondi europei non hanno prodotto sempre i risultati sperati. Andiamo a vedere.
Wales was built on coal mining and steel. Both have declined, the mines have closed, and West Wales and the valleys are left with stranded communities that once thrived.
It used to be great. You could go all these shops around here. There were shops down there was a picture house for there were shops up there, it was everything. It was a lovely little village.
EU funding helped pay to reroute a road around Crumlin instead of through it. The new train service doesn't stop here, and most people pass it by. Further down the valley, EU funds helped construct the Kalzaki Bridge, which, according to the Welsh European Funding Office, provides access to job opportunities, retail, leisure, cultural and educational services. But to many, it's just a fancy way to cross a railway line.
This bridge, I would argue, is £6 million. If they wanted to put a footbridge up across there, they could have just put a normal footbridge with access for disability, which has to be done today anyway. That's law. You've got to have disability rights, access, and all the rest of it. But this elaborate structure that I'm standing on now, I would argue, is better suited. It would be better situated at Alton Towers.
In fact, had the station platform been built on the other side of this single track, there'd have been no need for a footbridge. And a means of crossing the line already existed. The EU contributed some €4 million to the construction. There is a fear that Wales has not made the most of EU funds.
Well, we are now in the TV studio in Brussels. Lot of guests with me today and lot of questions. Can we maintain the same amount of regional funds when member states ask to freeze next EU budget? And is there a way to link in the future the project with the results in terms of growth and employment? So, to discuss about regional funds today, here with me Danuta Hübner from the People's Party Group, Constance Krell from the Socialists and Democrats Group, Michael Thierer, I hope I didn't make mistake.
Michael Theurer, hello.
Theurer, sorry, from the Liberals and Democrats Group, and Peter Klepp from Open Europe, a think tank which have a tough opinion on regional funds. We will hear. So, Danuta Hübner, the Parliament recently fixed already its, let's say, red lines about regional funds, what you really would like to protect and defend in the future. In advance, because the Commission is going to present a proposal after the summer break. Could you tell us briefly what will you ask to governments for the future?
First of all, I think it is important, and every practitioner would confirm it, that to have a successful investment, you need a certain amount of funding because the results have to come. So I think for all European budget, we should aim at keeping it at least at the level that we have today, because there are so many challenges. We need growth, we need employment. Somebody has to invest. Now we are also working on the new approaches, on the simplification, which I think is everybody is also in this small film. You could see the problems with bureaucracy, so we need to simplify this policy further. This is very, very important. But also we must make this policy responsible for the very concrete things, adjusted to the specificity. In every town you have a different problem. So we have also to combine the general European objectives with this specificity of a territory, with the concerns of the concrete people that have those problems.
Peter Klepp, do we have to protect this patrimoine européen, the cohesion fund, cohesion policy?
Well, it definitely needs some reform. In our research, we've shown that only 10% of EU structural funds are actually going to the poorest regions. So that's definitely something that should be improved. We've also seen that there's a big problem with the absorption capacity.
Yeah, we are going to speak about that in a minute.
Discuss later, but it's sort of interlinked. So
you think this money is not given to the people who need this money?
Exactly. Probably the intentions behind it are very good. No mistake about that. But we need to look at the facts and see how the results are. If we compare with, if we look at many studies that have been made, I mean, most of them were not very positive in terms of these funds actually helping these regions, which should be the objective.
Immediately, because it's 82% that goes to the poorest regions, not 10%. I think there's a big misunderstanding.
Well, I have to contradict that. That's at least what our figures show. So,
no, but we have figures in the budgets. I'm sorry, it's just a misunderstanding.
But who are actually going there in the end, which is, I think, what matters.
I mean, we shouldn't say such things on TV. I'm sorry, because they're just completely untrue. It's just incredible.
Well, so it's a question of GDP per habitant. I mean, how many poor regions are in Europe and how much money they receive. It's quite easy to understand. So I don't know.
A lot of funds are earmarked, but when in the end they are not being spent, part of the problem is that excuse me for going into the absorption capacity, but then, like, I believe in Romania it was only a very small percentage also that is actually being spent in countries like Romania, and I guess that's part of the problem. So what we need to do is to reduce the bureaucracy involved in preventing these countries for actually spending the money. You see, so I believe that's probably why there might be some confusion on the percentage.
Constance, it's true that there has been some waste, and we have an example in the report you have just seen of some big infrastructure work which at the end were not useful.
I think we have to give a new framework for the cohesion policy. We will start this in this autumn, and I think, for example, it's necessary to increase the support for research and innovation, for example, or for education for the people in the regions. But one is clear, every decision for every project is done finally in the region, and it's never paid by 100% from the European budget. It's every time in minimum 25% from the region, from Italy in the south, for example, and it's maximum 75% from the European budget. And this creates the necessity that every region has to decide themselves which priority they will set.
It is a question of absorption capacity.
Please.
Yeah, the co-financing is a problem of absorption
because it's
capacity.
One of the problems.
Yeah, because if there's a country like Greece which has a high depth, they argue that they cannot use, but that is a question of priorities. And if we look at the absorption rate, we have good examples. I just visited Estonia, and they have a high absorption rate as a former communist country.
Yeah,
but if you look to south of Sicily, they have a low absorption rate, and it is perhaps sometimes a question of co-financing, but there are other problems. It's very bureaucratic. The administrations, the local administrations, have not the competences, or they don't have the capacity, and so we have to solve that. We have to solve that problem. Sorry?
In some cases, there is a lot of fraud. We don't have to forget that there is a lot of...
We have some problems there. We realize that. Therefore, we need controls. But please, if you look to the structural policy, we should be fair, because we have some regions which perform really good, well, and we have some regions, they have problems. So let's focus on good and bad practice.
I didn't really understand what is your magic recipe on how to improve the absorption capacity, because Greek people now have to pay for their debt and the loan, the money they have received and they are going to receive. So they probably don't have the money in the next years to start new big infrastructure, new big in the co-financing. So, if I'm not wrong, even Jean-Claude Juncker recently said, in these exceptional cases, perhaps Portugal, Greece, and in a minute, I'd like to ask you also about Eastern countries, which is also an incredible example. In these perhaps small exceptional cases, Europe could perhaps focus on 3, 4, 5 big projects, but finance them completely. What do you think?
But that's exactly the problem. 17 billion euros for Greece are not taken by Greece. So why? Why did Greece not use the high depth they spend to co-finance investments, which creates jobs, which helps the infrastructure for the future. They didn't. So
because
now
they don't have the capacity.
Now if we look, not the capacity, or they have the wrong priorities in their public policy. So, okay, if they don't get new money, it might be an idea, like Juncker suggested, that we use a part of the loans we give to Greece and say, please use it to take the structural funds to improve the situation for the people, to create jobs, to build infrastructure, and for instance, to make projects with small and medium-sized enterprises who develop new products which they can sell on the world markets.
Danuta Hübner, what to do with eastern countries where Peter Klepp remembered in Romania, I think the capacity, absorption capacity is 11%. Do we have to just withdraw the money? I mean, they will lose the money.
There are, of course, very difficult cases, and you mentioned Romania, Bulgaria. There are probably some other cases that we have now. Greece, where we have all the problems related to absorption capacity, which Michael Theurer had just mentioned. And I think for the future we have to think more how to help. But we have to remember that co-financing is not only from budget of the member state. It can come, of course, from regional, local, but it can come also from the bank. And we have European Investment Bank. We have also, of course, it's difficult in case of Greece, but normally, or private sector.
Can we really think that Europe can abandon these countries?
Romania, I would just to mention, in Romania we investigated that, for instance, in one regional agency, it took 35 days for the town to work on the project. It took 60 days for the regional agency, and it took 260 or more days for the central government to approve. So the problem there was not the local or regional level. So one solution could be to delegate responsibility, to encourage, to strengthen the local and regional level, like it was done in Poland with very good successes.
Instead of central power.
Instead of centralized power.
Peter Klepp, what do you think?
I would like to touch upon another theme, the cost of the bureaucracy. We estimated that to be 670 million euro. It's an estimate per year, which is huge. And I think wherever you stand in this debate, because we're obviously quite critical towards structural subsidies, because if you look at the results, they didn't really improve economic growth. But even if you disagree with that, I think there's a clear case for reducing bureaucracy, and you can do that in a very simple way by just saying that the richest countries have to take care of their own poor regions. I mean, it doesn't make sense for a rich country to like, for example, the UK.
And how you
well, please let me.
The bureaucracy if you don't give the richest country the funds.
Well, it doesn't make sense for the UK, for example, to send over money to Brussels,
sorry. It's not
which
the
is
same
then
money
being
that is
helped
going
to
back.
send back to Wales.
Sorry, no, it's not the same money. This money comes from EU budget. This is money which is used to finance European common agreed objectives.
Sure, but then
so that's how the EU budget works. It's not about just
well, it needs to be changed.
giving
then. If
transfers
it works like
back.
that, it doesn't. I mean, I don't think a lot of poor people who actually receive the money will understand that you waste a lot of money just by sending it over Brussels and then back to Wales. I think that's
it's not exactly
no,
that.
I don't agree, because if you take the money in a national administration, this national administration will cause and cost bureaucracy as well.
I'd like now to move on another question, which is the relationship between regional funds and the development of regions, as we said. Until now, we have focused on the completion of the project, but in many cases, we have to admit, the money received by European Union didn't really produce long-term jobs and growth. So now everybody asks for more result-oriented projects, but once again, how can we achieve this goal? So, Danuta Hübner, I come back to you.
Yes.
What is your magic recipe for that? How to link better in the future the project with the development?
Can I just say one more thing? That we should also see that the European budget is extremely small budget.
Yes, we have to remember
because we
that.
talk like if it was God knows how much money, but of course it's just 1% of what we produced in entire Europe during the year.
So it's difficult to give money to
European
everybody.
and the funding that goes through regional policy, just 2.5% of all the public funding
Yes.
that is supporting economy. So we are really talking about small amounts of money, which have extremely strong, what we call here in Brussels, catalytic function, which means it generates other investment, it attracts also private capital. It makes the center of Liverpool so attractive that immediately private capital come and just start investing on the side. So I think we should remember about this.
It's more a question of controls, better controls, or it's more a question of both of priorities. So we made mistakes on the priorities. We have chosen the bad project.
Sometimes we choose, but we have to remember that every year you have 2 million projects around in Europe, co-financed with European.
To have less priorities.
So you have to have the priorities. We have to concentrate, and we will concentrate this policy again on something that is important now for Europe, will be important tomorrow. But also you have to understand, if you are a mayor of a city, you have to have your development strategy. You have to know why you need this road or this research center, because this will contribute to growth in your region. So you have to be a smart. Local authorities are extremely important.
Region has to have the final word, because I know that sometimes regions could use, European funds for electoral reasons, for other reasons which are not really the long-term results, because politicians sometimes just look at next elections and not really in the long term. So what is your answer?
The region is a key actor in this play because we need both. We need here in Brussels, in the research programs, top-down strategy for excellent research, but the region and the cities, the local level, is closer to the needs of the people. But there could be a misuse of the money as well. Let us take an example. If you use European money to restore the pavement of the marketplace, that will not create jobs, probably only if there is an attraction for tourism. But if there is a research center and you really help some people to attract nanotechnology firms or something like that, you will create growth and jobs. So it depends on what we spend the money, and therefore I think we should streamline and focus our future structural funds, but we should also encourage and strengthen the local and regional level because they are closer to the citizens.
I thank you very much for coming. Ed è tutto per questa settimana. Arrivederci.